I'm Nichole Roller. I'm from Tremont, Illinois, originally from Minnesota, and I am an artist. I'm also an art educator. I teach in Tremont, Illinois. I've been teaching there for about 22 years now. I live in Tremont with my husband and my 3 kids. A little bit about my educational background. I went to Minnesota State University of Moorhead, received a BFA in art education, an MA in art education from Boston University, an MA in painting from Bradley University, and I'm currently in the MFA program at Bradley. The work for the exhibition Pathways, I have 3 bodies of work. The first body is part of my abstract landscapes, and they are on square either canvases or boards, and they're from my own personal experiences of the landscape. My home is in the country and is surrounded by fields, farmland, and there's no trees. So those paintings are from my daily observations throughout the seasons. I'm attracted to the plow lines, the directional lines from the fields and the changing of the seasons. And so that is the first body of work. The second body of work is from my shape panel series. Similar start or process as the landscape series. I start with a square, but they're only on panels. And they're inspired not only by the landscape, but also by the architecture. So I start with wet on wet ink, typically take it outdoors in the landscape that's inspiring to me, and depending on the temperature of the day, the ink will either absorb really harshly to the surface of the board, and I'll get like these contrasts of color and textures and even patterns, versus on a really cool day, the ink will have a more gradual transition of value. And so once that is completed, it's actually quite a bit of a process, because I'll let it dry, then I will hose it off, I'll scrub off layers, and then I'll just keep building the ink on top. Once that is done, then I'll start laying these planes of color, and that comes from the architecture, human-made structures such as bridges, signage, factories, residential places. I'll start laying these planes of color until like the shape emerges. And then once that's done, the negative space or the sides, I will physically cut those off. And because I see the work as objects, I will paint those surfaces over again and wrap it around the edges. And at that moment, because I don't do any sketches per se, I think that those initial intuitive steps are my sketches. Then I'll refine, I'll tweak those colors. I will incorporate the bands of color into those final steps. And then the last grouping, fairly new, just like the shape panels. I started them about a year ago. I had these remnants or leftovers from the panels, and I saw something in those pieces, those painted geometric pieces, and I left them in my outbuilding, and they just created this large pile. And I would start to play with them, reconfigure them, see how different patterns and colors would interact with each other. So then I eventually cut those more organic, which was different because I typically work with geometric abstractions. And then I would like permanently affix those panels together. And then most recently I started, because I ran out of the leftovers, so then I had to make pieces specifically for the stackables. I started incorporating clay, which is completely different for me also, because I typically just work with paint. But I do teach a semester of ceramics at Tremont, so I had leftovers from demonstrations that now I pulled into that collection of work. I don't ever create a piece where I'm thinking this has to be it. You know, I think I just keep moving through one piece to the next piece. So I learn from one grouping of work or one particular piece. I don't like to just sit on a piece for a long period of time. I will just learn from whatever I've done in the previous work and learn from that and move to the next piece. So I don't sit too hard on any of the pieces that I do. It's either is happening or it's not. Color is very important to my work for the emotional component, but also from those things that I'm pulling from my observation. But I look at a lot of interior design architectural magazines. Even though my home's not like that, I find it appealing where there's contradictions in colors and patterns and textures. And those minute changes, just, like when one color can slightly shift to another. I love playing with color and how colors sit side by side with each other and they can look completely different. Well, for me personally, when I am painting and collecting ideas for my work, mostly through photography, just on my phone, snapshots, or just, memory, it's about, for me, taking a pause in the day. Life for everyone can be really busy, and it can also be mundane. And so I think when we just kind of move through the day and not to pay attention to our surroundings, I want to pay attention to those little things that are special. And I hope that if someone looks at my work, that they can also take a pause in their day to look at my work, but not only that, but see those little special uniquenesses of colors and textures and pattern and light.